The air was bitter and cold, howling through the deep ravines of the White Mountains. Snow fell in great swirls, obscuring the battlefield below Helm's Deep. Yet amidst the chaos and the storm, a lone figure strode forward. His breath was frost, his beard laden with ice, and his fists, bare and bloodied, were weapons no mortal man could match. Helm Hammerhand, the warrior king of Rohan, did not need a blade to strike terror into the hearts of his enemies. The Dunlendings cowered before him, their cries echoing in the valley. "He fights like a demon," they whispered. "The cold itself obeys his wrath." Helm's legend was born not in the halls of kings, but in the brutal winters of war, where survival demanded more than courage, it demanded fury. Helm Hammerhand was not born to be ordinary. Descended from the house of J.R.R, he inherited the bloodline of kings and a nation teetering on the edge of turmoil. When his father, Gram, passed, Helm ascended the throne as the 9th king of Rohan. But his reign began under the shadow of unrest. Rohan, the land of proud horse lords, faced growing tensions with the Dunlendings, who harboured generations of hatred for the Rohirrim. Helm's early years as king were marked by uneasy peace, broken by small skirmishes along Rohan's western borders. Yet even in these early conflicts, his strength and fearlessness earned him the name Hammerhand. Stories spread of his ability to fell enemies with a single blow, his fists striking with the force of a warhammer. Helm was not merely a warrior, he was a king who understood the fragile unity of his people. He strengthened Rohan's defences and rallied the loyalty of his marshals. Still, storm clouds gathered in the west, and Helm knew it was only a matter of time before his kingdom faced its greatest trial. It began with whispers, news of a Dunlending chieftain named Wulf who sought vengeance against Rohan for the perceived wrongs of his ancestors. Wulf was cunning, charismatic, and ruthless. He united the fractured tribes of the Dunlendings and forged alliances with Rohan's enemies beyond its borders. By 2754 TA, his forces were strong enough to march against the Riddermark. The invasion was swift and brutal. Rohan's villages burned as Wulf's army advanced, overwhelming the outnumbered and unprepared defenders. Helm and his people fought valiantly, but betrayal from within the kingdom left their forces splintered and vulnerable. Desperate to save his people, Helm retreated to the mountain fortress known as the Hornberg, a stronghold of ancient Númenórean design. There, in the shadow of the White Mountains, Helm made his final stand. The Dunlendings besieged the Hornberg, and Rohan's forces were trapped. Helm's warriors held the walls, their arrows felling wave after wave of attackers. But the siege dragged on, and supplies dwindled. Hunger and despair gripped the defenders, as the encroaching winter added its cruel hand to their suffering. As if summoned by Helm's defiance, the long winter descended upon the Riddermark in 2758 TA. The snow buried the land, and temperatures plummeted to merciless depths. For the besieged Rohirrim, it was a double-edged sword. The same cold that starved them also weakened Wulf's army, who were unprepared for the unrelenting frost. Yet Helm would not wait for nature to do his bidding. In the dead of night, when the snowstorms were at their fiercest, Helm Hammerhand became a ghost on the battlefield. Clad in white, blending with the snow, he would venture alone into the enemy's camps, striking down their warriors with his bare fists. His attacks were swift and devastating, his presence terrifying. To his enemies, he became a phantom, an unstoppable force whose fury could not be quelled. The Rohirrim whispered of these midnight raids with awe. "Our king fights not as a man," they said. "He fights as the wrath of the mountains." The siege of the Hornberg dragged on, a battle of attrition between Helm's unyielding defenders and Wulf's relentless forces. Inside the fortress, the people of Rohan suffered. Hunger gnawed at their resolve, and despair crept into their hearts. Yet Helm Hammerhand stood firm, a pillar of strength and defiance. His presence alone kept hope alive. His voice a thunderous command in the midst of chaos. Outside the walls, Wulf's frustration grew. The long winter ravaged his army, decimating his supplies and freezing the spirit of his men. Yet, Wulf pressed on, determined to crush the will of Rohan and claim the kingdom as his own. He underestimated the fire within Helm Hammerhand, a fire that burned hotter than the cold winds of the White Mountains. As the winter deepened, Helm's legendary midnight raids became more frequent. Each night he would slip beyond the walls, armed with nothing but his fists and his indomitable will. He moved like a shadow through the enemy camps, striking down warriors and sowing fear among Wulf's ranks. Helm's enemies began to see him as more than a man, a ghostly figure of vengeance and despair. To this day, it is said that his icy breath could be heard in the silent nights of the deep. But even legends are not immortal. After months of relentless cold and endless conflict, Helm's strength began to wane. He refused to show weakness, continuing to fight for his people until the bitter end. It was during one of these solitary raids that Helm met his fate. Whether from exhaustion, the unforgiving cold, or wounds sustained in battle, Helm's body was found frozen in the snow. Still standing upright, his fists clenched and his face set in defiance. Even in death he seemed unyielding, a symbol of his kingdom's resilience. Though Helm Hammerhand fell, his sacrifice was not in vain. The defenders of the Hornberg held strong, inspired by the memory of their king. With the coming of spring, in 2759 TA, Helm's nephew Freala F led the surviving Rohirrim in a counterattack, driving Wulf's forces out of Edoras and reclaiming the Golden Hall. The Dunlending occupation of Rohan ended, and peace was restored to the kingdom, though at great cost. Frealaf became the first king of the second line of the House of Yorl, and his reign marked a time of rebuilding. Yet, the memory of Helm Hammerhand loomed large over Rohan, a reminder of the strength and sacrifice required to preserve their way of life. In honour of his sacrifice, the Hornberg and the valley surrounding it were renamed Helm's Deep. The fortress became a symbol of Rohan's unbreakable spirit, a place where even the mightiest of foes could be withstood. During the War of the Ring, centuries later, this legacy would be rekindled when the people of Rohan, led by Theoden and defended by Aragorn, Legolas and Gimli, made their stand at Helm's Deep against Saruman's forces. The echoes of Helm Hammerhand's defiance reverberated through that battle, inspiring the Rohirrim to once again hold the line against overwhelming odds. His name, whispered in tales and sung in songs, became a beacon of hope for the free peoples of Middle-earth. Helm Hammerhand was more than a king. He was a warrior who embodied the unyielding spirit of Rohan, a protector whose legend was forged in the frozen fury of the long winter. His life, his sacrifices, and his defiance in the face of insurmountable odds continue to define the strength and resilience of the Rohirrim. To this day, his story serves as a reminder of what it means to stand strong against the storms of life, no matter how bitter the wind. Helm Hammerhand's tale is one of heroism, sacrifice, and the enduring power of hope. If you enjoyed this deep dive into the history of Rohan, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more content exploring the rich lore of Middle-earth. Thank you for your support, and hopefully, until next time.